Good morning, everybody. Welcome to First Center, First Church. I want a special welcome to all of the people who are watching us on social media. Those of you who are not interacting with us, we get all your messages, and I'd like to have you join us in Zoom sometime so we can hear from you as well. Special shout out to, what are the media platforms? Facebook, where you can watch a replay of everything we do every week, and YouTube as well. And we're on Twitter and some of the others too. If anyone feels like they want to support our work, there's links in all of our media platforms, as well as the chat room today. You'll see that the technicians give you options. So I want to welcome all of you, some of you back in the building, Reverend Judith and others. I never know anymore physically who we're going to see week by week. It seems like people are wanting to come back physically, and then yet I see many of you on the screen the following week, so we haven't quite figured that out. So we're having classes now in person and virtually every week at the center. We have a self-healing class, which it really is a compilation of what Ernest Holmes taught and Louise, who was our student here. We call that the Louise class, the self-healing class. Some people call it the love class. Doesn't matter what you call it as long as you get here and participate. Consciousness doesn't usually change on a dime. By that I mean it requires that you think, and you consider, and you reflect, and a little bit of education. I never knew all the things that I know now. I went to a lot of classes. I participated with people like yourselves, and I discovered new thought, and I realized from that discovery that all the things that I thought were wrong with the world and other people, it had nothing to do with them. The world is always in the perfect place, perfect time, and unfolding. The problem was always the way I was thinking. So Louise said, we're each 100% responsible for all the things that happen to us. And when I was a younger person, I don't think I liked that idea. I mean, it was much more convenient to think other people were to blame for everything. So we're going to get into our discussion today about, waking up. The real thing beyond waking up is staying awakened. So I don't know if I'm going to hit on all that, but that's what we do, is we come together and we awaken, we reawaken in many cases for some of you to how great thou art. So this history, this center, this church, we don't like to call it a church so much anymore. This is a place where we've had some great teachers. Raymond Charles Barker was the founder, and he was really quite an amazing, inspirational person. He was the guy of that era that everybody was talking about, and it was because of him that this particular chapter of religious science was created. And he was followed by Stuart Grayson, Dr. Grayson, who was another person who was really well renowned in our movement. And during those years, they had Louise as their most famous student, and Rev Wade Adkisson took up after Stuart Grayson, and he was here for quite a long time. And then I arrived about 6 years ago. And this center's got a rich tradition, a reputation for being focused on what we call truth. We don't usually get involved in too much of, I'll say, different types of philosophies. We're good at what we're teaching, which is principle. And that loosely could be described as, causing people to understand that they are really cause to their own experience, that they're, that you are, the idea of first cause and effect is that your consciousness is constantly creating your life. So we want you to wake up today. I want to wake up myself to that. Keep remembering that. So for those of you who are here for the first time, and for those of you coming back into the building, we always want to extend a welcome. We have a personal time after every lesson where we try to get it to as many people as we can. Sometimes lately we've been having over 100 people, 110 last week on one of our calls. So it's not always possible, but we get around, and please say hello and we can welcome you if you're new. You might say, I'm from Georgia or Nebraska. We've had people from everywhere and including other countries lately. So let us proceed. Life as we know it is ever expanding, and we are spiritual beings. We're expanding too, and we now allow our uplifting message, to reach people everywhere. That is the only gift I can think of about COVID for our church, is our audience has grown exponentially. We have over 5,000 people who have requested information from us. They don't tune in all at the same time, but there's several hundred, 400 or 500 tuning in weekly now, which is quite amazing from where we were 3 or 4 years ago. So how do you wake up, and how does this all work? If you're new, stay with us. For the old timers, bear with me. But it's always good to hear it again, because the thing I've learned about this teaching is there's always more work to do. And I thought when I was in my 30s I was going to get this teaching down, and read the textbook, took the classes, and what I realize now is you're never a finished product. I talked about that last week with Agatha. She's one of our favorite practitioners, and she would always say, I'm working on myself. How are you, Greg? Good, just like you, was our conversation. And what's new with you? And she would tell me, well, I'm working on me. And see, those are great answers for any truth student, because it's what we do. We're not really working on other people, I promise you. You can't fix them, by the way, which we've all learned here if you've been around any length of time. But we can greatly improve ourselves and the way we think. And the thing about that, if you can improve yourself and the way you think and the way you feel, then you're going to set something in motion, which is called the law of cause and effect. And all things can be made new for you because of your very consciousness. So all of these are familiar themes to anybody who's been in the teaching for any length of time. Louise, very simply and so elegantly said, it's all very simple. So if it's all so simple, how do you think we can wake up and stay awake? Ever since I was a kid, I was interested in spirituality and I was trying to figure out how it all worked. I was born into what I would say was the wrong religion for me, but I was a thorn in the side of my parents, I think, because I was always questioning everything. How come? Why? Why does this happen? Why do these people get excommunicated? What did they do? My father used to shake his head with me. I was trying to figure it out. Life didn't seem fair, as I remember, and the religion I knew did not seem to make a great deal of sense. Most of us on the call have had some kind of religious training of some kind, perhaps Buddhist, Christian, most Jewish. You've had something, most. Unless you're a younger person, say a millennial, or is it a Gen Z, maybe you didn't get any of that stuff. Maybe you were spared. So wherever we are, there's some learning and there's some unlearning involved in this process of awakening, waking up. And if you get here long enough, you're going to learn to do what we call, which is practice the affirmative life. And I could get into a whole lesson on that. Dr. Holmes said something that moved me many years ago. He said, find me one person who's so redeemed of the bondage of self And I will want to commune with that person and walk with that person and be with that person. So the person who's living the affirmative life really doesn't have time for the negatives. He or she's just reached a point in their evolution where they're not complaining. They just understand how it works. They understand that life is going to reflect whatever your subconscious is. If you're living the affirmative life and you're really committed to living it, you're living to see wholeness, you're living to see opportunity, because life is full of both opportunities, and it is whole, it's one. So find me one person who is committed to that. And he'll say, I will find the Redeemer of my soul. In other words, he's saying, that is the person I want to become, that's the person I want to hang out with. So we come here and we're learning to practice this life. And, week by week, sometimes we're very disappointed because we blow it. By that I mean we lose, we react. I spoke last week, it's like these fish hooks out there, and we seem to chomp onto them. So we keep at it. We keep learning to affirm. We keep learning to see the good. One of my great teachers, I quote her often, would say, I'm here to see the good in the God and the good. That was her sole preoccupation. That was really her ministry, was to tell people that one line. We have a great thing here in this teaching. This teaching's amazing. We quote Reverend Ike when he said, you just can't lose with it. You can't lose with the stuff we use. But are you willing to do that kind of work? In the face of all the evidence to the contrary, are you willing to say there is God in here? There's God in this somewhere. Do you have that kind of overriding preoccupation to know that it's all spirit, it's all God in action? I remember as a young boy, I went to a Catholic school, so we went to Mass every day. So there was Sunday school all the time. It was a parochial school. And I learned that there was sin, and I was born in it, what they called original sin. I don't know that everybody got it so heavy as what I got, but most people coming out of the Judeo-Christian system got a lot of programming. But for me, within a few years, I learned that I need to seek penance. I needed to go to the sacrament of where you do make confession. And I needed to be saved. And of course, this brings up all kinds of interesting questions to a young mind. If you're born in sin, and your rewards are going to come much later and all that stuff. And I learned some positive things too. I learned about Jesus and the whole story, and much of it was beautiful, but then I learned that he died for my sins again, so I was right back into the whole thing of being a sinner. And I learned all this by the time I think I was in first and second grade. And I cannot begin to tell you how that affected me all those years ago. It kind of like instills a sense of guilt in you when you're very, very young. And, anybody who knows anything about children or psychology would know that's kind of like, it's damaging, actually. So there was this sense of guilt and shame very early on, for I was taught to believe that I was a sinner. Now, I know some of you have had versions of that, and I know different faiths. They don't teach exactly the same thing, but they teach that the reward will come later, and everything is God's will, and it's a lot to take in. When you come into a teaching like this, usually you're trying to get away from a teaching like that, and hopefully no one who is here on the call is burdening themselves with that anymore. Part of what we do here is to tell you how great you are, and so you can get freed up from these types of limiting theologies. And to be fair, though, there was good stuff too. I remember those nuns, for the most part, as being very loving. They would tell you things like, love God with my whole mind and my whole heart, and it taught me to love everybody without exception, no matter who they were, where they were, to love them. So these ideas stuck, but the rest was highly suspicious, and increasingly it got to the point where it had to be cast away. So all of us can entertain the idea of loving the universe, loving the people in it, loving life, loving everyone, everywhere. And then I'll bring in Louise Hay's beautiful comment, which is people are doing the best that they can. They're evolving in consciousness. So love them all. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to marry them. You don't have to hang out with them. But understand that each of us, you're starting with yourself. You are a spiritual being and you are evolving in light and in wonder, and you're not the same person you were even 2 years ago. And the people you encounter, let's refrain from judging them for anything, because we know, it's there they are. They're evoluting along just as we are. So the goal was to love life, love whatever notion we had of God with our whole heart, mind, and body. And that rings just as true to me today as it did 60 years ago. And it probably does to you too. Coming from that place and staying awake to that love is the challenge. It was a younger person's sense, that loving the world and loving God and loving everyone. And that's a challenge for all of us today. You can ask yourself, do I love everyone? Do I love the world? Do I trust the process of life? Because as you start to have that consciousness, it's really a beautiful thing. And maintaining it is what we talk about and teach, and it's what we want to wake to for today and every day. So we come together with all these reminders, and we wake up to the fact that this spirit, this activity, this creative something is in you. And that's our practice. So we want to hang on to that one. I hope whatever you were taught as a child was much less severe and much less dogmatic than what I was taught. I think the younger generations are spared. I hope they are. I hope they're learning that life is more giving, and that there's beauty and there's essence and there's spirituality in everything and everyone. But whatever you got, a famous teacher years ago said, whatever you got as a child was good enough to get you here. Our parents may not have been perfect, but whatever you got in your background was good enough to get you here. You figured out a lot of things over time. Figuring out, though, where you are with God or the creative process, can be a daunting process. It is an ongoing preoccupation, or at least it was for me. Raymond Charles Barker, who was our founder here, author of several books, in an upcoming talk, he said that we've got to get a new definition of God, especially those of you who are hanging on to the old one, out of biblical times, God of fear, God of might, the God that will go through and, kill off the firstborn of, a group of people, or, anything and everything like that. That stuff, really want to release. A God that you have to approach with fear and trembling, as the Bible would say. Because Barker would say, whatever we use the word God today, it brings us to a past idea, a recollection. And he says we have so much stuff in our subconscious mind around the subject of God. He said he really preferred to use another word. And then he went on to say in that lesson, which I think I'm delivering next week, he says, I had to come up with some other words because he says every time I used it in a Sunday lesson, he says I'd be bringing people back to some old construct of God. And he says it isn't where I wanted them to go, because I'm trying to teach them about a living spirit, an entity that's in them and operating through them. So think about a new word for yourself. I'll talk more about that next week. The same was true, incidentally, of most of the 12-step programs. People in all those programs speak about a God, but they don't really mostly call it that. They call it a higher power. And in the third step, it says one of your own understanding. So they're encouraging you to think about what this energy, this power is to you and how it works. So that's really what you get here when you come to realize that you're part of something. It's an energy, and it can't be denied, and it can't fully ever be explained. We know only a little about how it works. I didn't just jump into New Thought. I went in. I was a slow learner. Every time I crossed the threshold, my Catholic guilt was like, oh my God, I should bless myself because these people are talking about things that I would have been taught were blasphemy back in those days. All of us evolve spiritually at our own pace, and I will add that we evolve perfectly, because then again we come back to the phrase perfect place, perfect time, all the time. So I'm not preoccupied in wondering where people are in their spiritual journey. I might have been 50 years ago because I was minding people's business more then. As we get more involved in this teaching, you realize the perfection. You realize the perfection that's unfolding in you. As you start to know that, it'll come to you that it's unfolding perfectly in everybody else also. And you don't have to do anything with other people to force them or make them get it. I mean, it's one thing to invite somebody here or say tune into their Facebook page, listen to the lessons. That's great. But please don't be attached to what anybody does. Refuse to be offended. Realize that you're on your own spiritual journey. And you can't make people be on a spiritual journey, nor can you make them, think the way you think. Why would you want to? Each of us are individualizations of this God life, and we're here to express ourselves authentically, truly as we are. You can take the pearls of wisdom we share here and take them for yourself and use them as you want to. You don't have to think the way we think. That's not required. What we're trying to get you to do is to think. Because a lot of people don't think. We quoted Camus last week and others who would say the masses are always wrong. And what he was getting at there was the idea that the masses aren't thinking. The masses are largely reacting. And that's the way it's always been. And you come into this teaching, we encounter people like Ralph Waldo Emerson who would say, essentially like Barker, that you're the whole bit. See, you're the person who gets to create it all, at least in your life. Most of the world is out there and they don't have a clue. They're trying to amass material goods and they're trying to play one-upmanship on one another, and it's like a race to get to the top. And it's a real waste of time because you're in no competition with anybody. You never have been. You are an individualization of God life yourself, and you're here to actually to learn, to grow, and to expand. So I know, looking back, that I was interested in spirituality always, and I was always trying to make some kind of sense of it. What I've concluded from all my studies over, 60 years, in college and in life and in ministry is this power, this essence, knows no time, occupies no singular place. It's whole wherever it is and everywhere, and it has no gender, and I can use it. And now think about that. I can use this power. When I was younger, I prayed to it, and I wanted it to do things for me, save me, fix me, give me what I wanted, when I wanted. I'd be there praying up in a fervor. And it's interesting because I look back at it now and just shake my head. It doesn't work that way. I told you all before, I met a religious science practitioner when I was, probably in my mid-20s. And her name was Mary, and she came up and said to me, I'm going to be your practitioner. And I thought, oh, please stay away from me. These people who are trying to change me and help me. But she did get me to think one thing and understand one thing. She said, Greg, you were the child of a lesser God. And she said, you were looking for God to save you at different times and fix situations when you were in trouble or something. And she said, it doesn't work that way. She said, but I'm going to tell you, it works better than the way you think it works. She says, this power, this universe so absolutely loves you. She said that it responds to your every thought. She said it doesn't miss a single one. So I'm going to say to you all, it doesn't get any better than that. That's the best kept secret of the age. This power is in you, and it operates through you, and it responds to you, and it doesn't miss a single thing. So, as we come back to the talk, whatever we try to name it, there's lots of names for that which cannot be really described, or however we try to name it or how we try to describe it, it's just an attempt by a human being to describe something that's indescribable. Since there's no name for it that it's adequate. Well, you could be over in Pakistan, you could be in China, you could be in South America, you could be in Asia. You're all in your heart of hearts connecting with the same thing. It's got different names. It's the same. It's sad, though, people have been fighting throughout history over who's right and who's got the right name and all that stuff. But, we come into a teaching like this, and we really understand that the universe is one. The energy that we love, that's in us, operating through us, is one energy, and that each of us are individualizations of this one energy. There's no good people and bad people. There's absolutely no reason to be fighting people over religion, and people have been doing it throughout history. So there's no name that's adequate, no creed that will universally satisfy people. We in this teaching spend some time teaching what it does and how it works. In our textbook, the first 4 chapters are very helpful for people to get the basics and how to use it. As I think back, I recall from one of Dr. Barker's books, I think it was Spiritual Healing for Today, he stated that all creation in the individual is the result of ideas in the mind. And he went on to say, your subconscious mind is the creative consciousness of all that you are and all that you will ever be. It's always been about you. So see, some of you are making your life about other people. My boyfriend, my wife, my husband, my kids, and you frame your statements around what other people are doing. And so if I were in a therapy group, I would say, you're a bit other referred. So let's stop doing that. The great news here is you are an individualization of life, of spirit itself. And whatever spirit is, and it is everything, right? It's unfolding in you. And you have power at your disposal to think a new thought, to change your mind, to let yesterday end last night and start anew today. You are an individualization of life, and that life is your life, and it's responding to you all the time. So I'm always saying, create a huge dream, a huge vision, and wake up to these bigger concepts. Some of you have just got these small ideas that have been with you for 40 or 50 years. And I don't deserve much, I'm happy with the little bit I got. I'm not as smart as this one, I can't do this and I can't do that. Wherever you are, if you're doing a lot of that stuff, find it within yourself to stop. Just stop yourself mid-sentence and say, it's not true. It's not true. I'm wonderful, I'm whole, I'm complete, I'm capable, I celebrate the health that I have, I'm a prosperous being, I'm one with the one, there's no one like me in the world. Begin those kind of healthier, more expansive conversations. Louise always had an exercise that was useful. I've used it probably hundreds of times. And she would say, imagine yourself approaching what she called the ocean of life. So think of a big wave, and you're at the shore. And she said, you're there and you're carrying a container with you. And then the question comes up, what kind of container are you bringing along? Because you're going to use that container to draw from the ocean of life. And she said, what's your container? Is it something small like a thimble, or is it a coffee cup, or are you dragging along some kind of a basin or something where you can receive a lot from life? So she went on, can you see yourself with a bigger container and willing to draw forth much good from it? She said, or are you someone who just expects a little? I'd be happy if my husband just does this, or I'd be happy if I get a little raise, or I'll be happy if, always happiness is where? It's when something else happens or someone else does something. See, if you're doing that stuff, you're delaying your good. And if you can imagine yourself approaching the life with a bigger container, with an expectancy that you're going to be filled, really what I'm asking you to do, and she was too, is imagine yourself with a bigger consciousness. She was talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson, which he said, hitch your wagon to the stars. Dream as big as you can. That's why people do vision boards and they contemplate some of these bigger ideas so they can put something in action in consciousness. The thing is, for all of us, as you come into this teaching, you can definitely decide all of that, yourself. If you have great expectations, it doesn't mean the universe is going to deliver up exactly what you're throwing out there, but it's going to deliver up something that's probably better, bigger, better. We all have the opportunity to create a magnificent life, a great life experience. But here's the thing, this is one of my mother's lines, it's entirely up to you. And wishing and hoping won't be enough. Because we can wish, we can hope, but that actually means if I'm wishing for something, I'm hoping, and I'm praying to some God out there, it really is a statement to my own inner self that I don't believe I have it. So we want you to seize the reins that Ernest Holmes spoke about. When we teach Science Mind to the kids, like with the Stagecoach, get up on that platform and use the power that you have. See, this isn't just meditation. This is, once you've established in your consciousness that you have this power, then it's incumbent upon you to start using it, start practicing it. There's power for good, Ernest said. Greater than you of what's your part, and you can use it. So, once we wake up to the fact that you have this power, then, okay, I have it. Now I need to start thinking differently. I need to become more passionate and have greater conviction about the power I have and start to use the power I have. Each of us, we're the authors of our own ship, if you want to say, captains or whatever. We're writing the chapters. We're the authors of our books. And I'm very fond of a lady years ago who said to me, Greg, the final chapter is not yet written. And that's true for every last one of us, whether we're 8 or we're 80. The final chapter hasn't been written, and you can start it all new right now. So if I want to have a new life starting here, starting today, the first thing I would suggest is just be grateful that you're in this conversation where you realize I can be in a new day and I can create a new life. Be grateful, grateful, grateful that you have this awareness. And then say to yourself, okay, I'm going to stop my stories. I'm going to stop criticizing myself. I'm going to stop criticizing everybody else. Because I know everything is God in action. It's all God activity. And wherever people are, whatever is happening, it's like it's unfolding in perfection. And so I begin with myself today and tell myself, I'm whole, I'm complete, and every encounter I'm going to have is a holy encounter. Without exception, even with people I'm not particularly fond of. They're there for a reason, by the way. So there's an acceptance. There's a book that I'm fond of, there's a phrase in it, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. I've got to start to get to the point where I realize nothing, absolutely nothing is happening in life by mistake. It's all God activity, God in action. Our founder here in New York, Raymond Charles Barker, suggested, let's wake up and begin to use this power. He said our own power was omnipotent when we use it correctly. That's our own power. We have all this power. We have all available when we use it correctly. When it's used with an awareness of our sense of connection, when we connect with it. So often you'll hear me say, are you coming from connection? Or are you reacting? If you're reacting and you're in a story, that's not going to take you anywhere. But when you center yourself in God activity, you have such power in you, operating through you. It's unbelievable. You could light up a town. You have power, you have intelligence, You have everything that God has, or the universe has, you have within you. So when you're coming from a place of connection, when you're plugged into this power, when you're doing that, you're going to maintain your health, you're going to have positive expectancy in all things. Barker spoke about right thinking. And we have right thinking when we're in alignment. So take a pause each day and get yourself in alignment. When you find yourself reacting to somebody, take a pause. Go into another room, take a breath, take a moment, center yourselves so you can be aligned with right thinking. When you do this, you'll be experiencing peace, power, more love, more joy, and you'll be coming from a place of wisdom. All of this is available to us right now. This kingdom, if we want to call it a kingdom, probably a bad word for Barker because he wanted to drop the pronouns. This source, this power, this energy is at hand. Heaven, if you want to think of it as heaven, is here for you in this moment if you will allow yourself to sense it, feel it, experience it. It's always here. So go to Ram Dass next. Be here now. If you have that understanding that the kingdom is here, that everything you're looking for is here, then bring yourself back to this present moment. The book I will write one day will be in this new moment. Because in this new moment, all things can be new for you. And as we move forward, teachers and practitioners are often asked about what we believe about this process and the higher power and all, what we call it and all. And we have learned to be more careful with the words we use. Many of the old timers at this church and churches throughout the country still call it God, though Barker said it's a mistake. He said, I don't have any problems with it personally, and I don't either in 2020 or 2020s, but I know that word can turn a lot of people off. In the first 4 chapters of our textbook, Ernest Holmes seems to be calling spirit it. Yeah, he called it it, in an attempt to introduce the subject in a new way. In talking about spirit, most of the words and phrases that people use, the old words, bring forth a lot of old ideas and tied into old religions. And Barker was always saying, we don't want to take them there, we want to take them into the present. I recall someone saying to me a long time ago, and I like this line, he says, in attempting to name it, he says, think of it as a presence that's never an absence. So whenever I'm in a different place or I think something's wrong, I'm reminded to, it's a presence. It's never an absence. It's in me, operating through me all the time. And I liked that then, and I liked it now. We tend to use a lot of phrases that have meaning to us personally. Usually here, I've noticed, and over the years, a lot more people are calling it creative intelligence. They'll say, spirit in you. I mean, you can take your pick. Whatever one resonates with you. The whole thing is for you to have a personal sense of it within yourself. Please don't try to make yourself like anybody here or like any other religion. Attempt to sense it and feel it operating in you and call it what you want. Take the name that resonates with you. We had a wonderful minister here who used to inspire me, Reverend Theodora, and I believed the word she always used was love or universal love. See, and then I'm fond of her. There's a minister, I can't remember what her real name was, but she was fond of calling this power Big Sweetie, and that used to make me laugh. And I thought, why not? It's as good as any other name. All the creeds in the world, in the end, to my way of thinking, are people's attempts to be working out this notion, this activity, this spiritual activity for themselves. So in that sense, they're all inspired and they're all good. They're inspired by people just like you and me who are trying to work it out. We teach here at the center that there is but one power, one energy, one force, and most of all, we teach you that it's in you and you can use it. And we teach you that there's nothing else. There's not God and something else. There's not bad people and good people. There's not any of that. We live in this unitary field. That was a phrase that Deepak Chopra coined, I believe. We live in this unitary field of spiritual activity, and there is nothing else. God and I in Space Alone was the poem I read often. It's you in this divine energy always, this unitary field. Please don't make other people bad guys or good guys, or don't even exalt them, because all of them are spiritual beings just like you are, and they're in different places in their evolution. So we live in this, we move in it, we have our being in it, we wake to it each day. And then, oddly, somehow we seem to forget that it's there. And we get in life and we react to stuff. And so we're forever somewhat the prodigal child, meaning we're born in the kingdom. Our worth is established. You can't be more worthy than you are. And we forget. And there's a line from the Louise Hay work, remembering and forgetting. It seems to be the game that we play. As you practice this teaching, as you learn to be involved, I would suggest to stay with the classes. If you miss a class, watch it on YouTube or watch it on Facebook. I used to get these lessons for years. I'd have to pay $7 for every lesson. And I'd listen to that lesson several times, because every time I heard it on a different layer of it. And I would take it in more. You can listen to some of the Louise Hay audios. People have been doing that for years. Just let your mind, let it just come in and do its magic. So we live a bit like the prodigal child, meaning we're lost sometimes. We're off in the weeds and we forget that you're the princess or the prince, of the realm. Everything that, in that sense, everything in the kingdom is yours. But we forget. We forget that we have power. We forget that, like Barker, it was Ernest Holmes, we forget there's an enormous account they're talking about of spiritual riches downtown, and all we have to do is learn how to receive the good that's always been established for us. When we wake up each day and we remember what we are, if you really come from that place of connection, then you're going to stop the stories, you're going to stop talking about people, you're going to stop talking about what's wrong and what's missing, and you're going to start talking about what's there. You're going to start talking about your health, the opportunities, the friendships, the good that's really always there, but we never talk about that. We usually talk about what's bothering us. By default, we're programmed to do that a bit, so it's not anyone's fault, but it's what human beings do. So our challenge is to turn it all around. There's a song I love by a singer that we're starting. She's doing songs for us. What's her name? I think it's Steinberg. Yeah. The song she sings is, "We're free to turn it all around," and you are. So you might think you're powerless, and you might tell yourself a lot of things, but really you could start today to turn the whole darn thing around if you wanted to. As I was putting my notes together, I remember in the mid-'80s, around 84, 85, I met Reverend Bill Cameron in Florida. And I've had 3 or 4 really exceptional teachers, and he was one of them. And he was one of those special people that we all seem to encounter at the perfect time. And I think life is like that. It could be a grandmother, it could be a teacher, it could be a mentor. And I used to love the conversations I had with him. He was kind, he was elderly, he was wise. And I challenged him, and I think he was delighted in it. He helped me wrestle with my own roots, and he helped me unlearn a lot of stuff that I had learned from the religious background I have. And in that sense, I'll forever be in his debt. He in Unity helped me get ready for religious science, because I don't think I could have dealt with coming into religious science without first going to Unity for a couple of years, where I could think in terms of, I'll say the New Testament differently. He would give spiritual interpretations of the Gospels. I found that the Unity teachings, I found them a few years before I discovered Louise Hay and her book, You Can Heal Your Life, but I started teaching and facilitating groups from that very church a couple years later. But Dr. Bill Cameron used to say over and over again, the birth of Christ, the Christ child happened over 2,000 years ago. And he says, in every December all over the world, the celebration continues of the birth of Christ. He says it was to commemorate the great event and what it symbolized. And he said the idea was a bigger idea than what most people realized. And he referred to it as the best kept secret of the ages. And he said Jesus represents the awakened person, or the awakened man, the awakened person, the person who has self-knowledge, the person our soul longs to be, the person that we really are. It was the person that we're all wanting to become. Jesus was many things to different people around the Galilee at the time. His life now means different things to people all over the world. For us in New Thought, he was the example of who we are becoming in our own unique way. We are learning something he taught. And what we're learning is Spirit and I are one. If we think a little bit about the early followers of Jesus and the Gospels that eventually followed them, because the church didn't exist for hundreds of years after Jesus lived and died. There were many Gospels, and Jesus had nothing to do with them, nor did he say in the four Gospels or interpretations very much of what's in them. No one who ever wrote of him ever knew him or saw him or was alive when he was alive. In the Bible, there are four Gospels selected in 400s. Centuries later, we know that there were probably as many as 8 or 10 Gospels written with similar yet differing accounts. And again, by people that never knew who he was. The organization around him over centuries wrote his story. When I was younger and I attended religious classes and Sunday service, whenever anybody was reading from the Bible, the reading ended with the very solemn, "This is the word of God." And I think we blessed ourselves. And the thing about his teaching, I love all the parables we learned, and I'm sure many of you do as well. Loving my brother as myself, loving my enemy. These are high callings, and they require a lot from us. And it speaks to a very deep metaphysical concept and understanding. It's the realization of the unity of life unfolding in perfection. Loving God, loving the universe, and loving everybody in it with our whole being, our whole heart. Now, that is a true metaphysician. And we think that Jesus was a true metaphysician. I mean, he was an awakened being. He said, you know, it's not me, it's the Spirit within me or the Father within me that's doing the work. And of every one of us on this call today, it's not you, it's not me. You know, it's Spirit coming through you. It's being open to Spirit. It's realizing that Spirit is the thing that makes us all great. You know, and of Jesus, if we can trust anything that was ever written about him, the statement was, these things and greater you will do too. All of humankind is advancing. I mean, we look at everything now, it's just speeding up so fast. But the underlying truth of it all is we're still spiritual beings, and we're trying to figure it out. Our teaching, though a lot of people come to us because they want to attract prosperity and abundance, our teaching is so much more than demonstrating a new thing, a new toy. Potentially, our teaching is awakening ourselves to that which is sublime and perfect within us. And potentially, it's awakening us to, you know, you have it all within you right now. And no one I know has ever done it perfectly, but if you're aiming for the stars, that's the place we aim. You know, the idea of, you know, namaste, every, encounter you have is a holy encounter. Seeing that God and goodness in everybody is really the practice. There have been many hundreds of Christian groups that have added a lot of stuff to the message of Jesus. You know, he had a great message. I love the messages without all the stuff that got heaped on it over time, because the message he had was a message of pure love and acceptance. And that there is a presence in you, and it's in everyone, And this presence is always wooing us, inspiring us to create new moments. Reverend Cameron, way back then, said to me over and over again, "It's in you, Greg, it's in you." And that was the best kept secret of all time, he said. That's what Jesus' life really symbolized, that this energy, this spirit is in you and responding to you. The potential of this awakened spirit is in you. The awakened spirit is celebrated every December. It's a great season. But the thing is, we could be living from this place of connection, knowing that there is this spirit within us every single day of our life. If you wake up and say, "I love myself, life is great, this is the day that God made, this is a day where I can create all things new." You have the ability to do that every day. This is the day where I get to create all things new. This is the day where I can drop my complaining. This is a day where I can stop griping, I can stop talking, I can stop bearing false witness against others. This is the day where I can be too busy for all that stuff. This is a day where I can truly be about Spirit's business. As you get to be where I am in life, you really start to consider. You've got like 2/3, 3/4 of your life behind you, and you think, my goodness, now what do I want to do with my life now? In previous talks, I was quoting a song from Carly Simon. I haven't got time for the pain. I haven't got time for the bull crap. How do I say that in church? I guess I just said it. I don't have time for it, truly. You want to do that, God bless you. It's your right and your prerogative. But, some of us really want to be about what we'll call the Father's business or Spirit's business. And that stuff has lost its luster. It's lost its, if you go there, it's certainly your prerogative, but I don't want to go there with you. I think Raymond Charles Barker said that in one of his talks. So, awakening to the fact that this thing is in you. Dr. Bill Cameron used to say, that's the hope of glory, your glory. Realizing that God in you is the hope of your glory. Now, that is something to think about. That this power is in me, and it's responding to me. So plug into that and start creating from that place of understanding. Don't create from the place of, ain't it awful, poor me, and nobody understands me, and nobody loves me. That's a bunch of story, and it will take you no place you want to go. So you're whole and you're holy, and that's awesome. And I know some of you don't feel that way about yourself. You don't feel holy. You don't feel great and wonderful, but the fact is you still are holy. You still are great, and you still are wonderful. You don't feel wonderful or even good sometimes about yourself. A lot of times maybe you don't feel that way. Our broadcasts go far and wide, and I'm sure some of you who are listening today might be experiencing sadness, remorse, because life is life and things are happening all the time. If you're not feeling good about your life or your circumstances, this lesson is especially for you. And it's for the rest of us too, who need to be reminded of the truth. And the truth is we're always supplied and supported. And we always have the power within us. And as you turn to that power within us, it's nurturing and it will give you new ideas. And all I'm doing today is passing along the wisdom to you, to any of you who don't realize how truly great you are. And this lesson is for the rest of us who need to be reminded that we need to be reminded that this creative intelligence, spirit in you, is expressing itself perfectly. And it's expressing itself perfectly through you right now. So know with me that you or anyone, whatever you've been through this week or today, right up to now, has been necessary for you to be right where you are with your present understanding. And know that your consciousness has always been expanding and that you have needed to go through what you've gone through to be where you are right now. Some questions? Can things get better for you? Can your life improve? Can your health improve? Can you become more prosperous? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. When you seem to have lost so much, I've been there before. Some of you have been like, oh my God, I lost everything. You know, you might wonder, how am I ever going to get through the day or the week? And you ask yourself, can the joy return after all these losses and heartaches and heartbreaks? Can there be a second chance or even a third? And the answer is going to be yes. Yes and yes. Absolutely yes. Things can and will definitely get better if that's what you deeply desire. But you got to want it, remember. It will correspond to your belief. So if your belief is all about, you know, how awful it is and it's been and my life is over, you got to be careful of that type of thinking and believing, because life acts upon that. You can learn to heal your life to a point where you can become optimistic again and full of peace and calm. The universe, I'm fond of saying, one of my favorite things that was ever told to me, always has my back, has your back. We either forget this or we haven't come to the point of realization of it yet. All of us are waking up, and that's the point of today's talk. Wake up and do something with it. Wake up to the idea that universal life reflects our deepest dreams and our beliefs. We who understand this teaching and this gift of affirmative prayer know that we can heal any and all areas of our life. The universe sends us green lights. It's all green lights for you if you just accept it and know that you have that power. It's green lights for you every day if you are practicing this teaching. You just can't lose. Nothing is denied you. I'd like to see any or all of you who want to demonstrate a greater life in any way start working the teaching. Begin by attending the classes. These classes and this kind of therapy I used to have to write big checks for. You know, we don't charge anything. Everything is voluntary donations, and we love it, of course, when you support our work. But, you know, you can tune in 24 hours a day and listen and just keep reminding yourself of the beauty you are, the power you are, and remind yourself that all of life is supporting you. By attending on Zoom call, interacting, you'll have a sense of community. You can listen to other people. We have time for sharing. Most everything we do can be found on YouTube and Facebook just after we broadcast it. As you come here and start to engage in these discussions, think about what we say. You'll remind yourself of the truth of who you are and what you are. We'll introduce you or reintroduce you to new thought and its amazing power, the potential it has. And you'll begin again to get excited about you and realize that everything is possible and everything is furthermore okay. I'd like to see everybody on this call truly hitch their wagon to the stars that Emerson spoke of. What we do here will help you see and create a world where nothing and no one is against you. Our teaching, its practice, will help you lift your focus from the conditions of your life to a much greater truth. I'd love to know more and more that you are actively trading in lesser ideas for the greater. Let's let go of the stuff that's holding us back. I know with a little bit of effort on your part, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. I personally know that everybody here deserves a great life. And I furthermore know that the universe's will for you is to have one. And you're here to expand and grow and keep your connection with so you can be happy, joyous, and free. We're always celebrating the awakening of consciousness in you. That's the hope of your glory. Jesus was a symbol of what's possible for all of us. So we'll wrap it up by saying, let's begin it today. Let's close the lesson knowing that it is all good and it's all happening through us. And I declare we're each approaching the ocean of life with an open container, a big container, and we're receptive to receive all the good that there is. And we're willing to trade in all the old for the new. And so ends today's lesson. We're going to see you at the other side. Thank you.